You are listening to Real Talk Texas on 570 KLIF News and Information. Now, live in studio, your host, local real estate expert Steve Hakes.
Welcome to Real Talk Texas. I'm your host, Steve Hakes. Today on the show, we're going to talk about first-time buyers and buying your first house versus renting or maybe downsizing, those kind of things. But primarily, we're going to talk about renting versus buying a home and what's happening in the market out there today. So today in the studio, I've got Aaron Graham, and he's with Highland Homes and also Horizon Homes. He's going to talk about the new build, the new homes that are available out in the marketplace. And I've also got Laura Mendez and Kathy Beck in the studio as well, and they're going to talk about existing inventory and how realtors can really help you with a new home as well as an existing home that's out there when you're in the buying process. So first, we're going to start the first segment. We're going to start with Aaron Graham. We're going to talk about he was on our show when was it, Aaron? Back in March? April. And it was kind of neat because the market was just turning back then, and we were talking to Aaron about what was happening in the builder community. And so, Aaron, you may want to elaborate on what you talked about then and how you're a soothsayer and everything came true, right?
Well, we did back in April talk about the increased demand that we had started to see, and that demand has really not relented. So traffic and sales did continue to increase. We also talked about a limited supply of vacant finished lots to build new homes on, and that supply has actually even become tighter in the last 6 months, given the sales that have taken place in the marketplace. We talked about rising costs, labor, material, and lots, and all those things have happened and also have not really calmed down, and we're already anticipating some price increases from material providers and labor subcontractors starting the new year. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, even though you've got price increases, which we've seen with new construction throughout the summer, you've got some homes that are really good quality that are affordable still, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we also said back in April that anybody who bought a home April, May, June, by the end of this year would already have equity built in, and that's already happened. And that's going to happen again in 2014. It is a function of supply and demand, and the demand is exceeding the supply. In fact, the number of new lots being developed is higher now than it was, but the demand for housing and for new homes has exceeded even that increase in supply of lots. And so we're going to continue to see price increases.
What kind of percentage, if I were looking at that when we were talking back in April, how much have homes gone up over the summer?
Well, over the summer, we've probably seen another 5 to 6% increase. So for a 12 trailing months from about a year ago, we've seen 10 to 15% increases in home prices. And in some specific communities and municipalities, we've seen up to 20% increases in a year.
Well, I don't think that really is much different than existing inventory that's out there, because we've seen, 10, 12% increase in that as well?
Yes, absolutely. The limited supply of new home inventory is only matched by the limited supply of existing inventory that's also for sale.
It's kind of a perfect storm. It really is one of those things that, and I've been talking about it a lot on my show, about now's the time to buy. And even though there's limited inventory and your choices may not be as broad, and working with a builder, you may have to wait a little longer to get into your house because you might have to get in line. But I really, truly believe that, and we're going to talk about that later in the show, rent versus buy, and we're going to talk about how much you're paying in rent now versus if you were owning a home, and how affordable it really is to get into housing. But it really, and I agree with you, 2014, we're going to see the same as 2013.
We are, and you might have some listeners who are worried, oh, wow, if prices have already gone up that much, is this a bubble and I'm going to buy at the peak? Every forecast that I've seen, and based on the observations of our own operations, the prices are going to continue to rise in 2014. So it's still, as we said in April, a good investment. Would have been an even better investment had they bought in April than, say, in November, December, but still going into 2014, we're going to see increases.
Right, you can't look back. You can only look forward, and I think that it's just, you got to be smart with your money, and you got to make sure you're buying homes. And I talked to a guy recently, and he said, you should take your gross income and buy a home 2.5 times your gross income. And that's a financial planner that was on our show and was talking about that. So it's kind of an interesting math, and as you're growing your family and you're growing that's not a bad concept.
Yeah.
So tell me, Aaron, if we're going to focus today on first-time buyers, and when I think of your homes, they're so nice. I always think they're going to be so high priced, and you sent me some information about some of your Horizon homes as well as some Highland homes. And I'd like for you to share, kind of what price range, what's happening, and what are the communities you're seeing that are perfect for our listeners that are thinking about buying their first home.
You bet. You know what? One interesting trend that we have seen in the Metroplex overall is that the number of new home sales in the under 200,000 price range has actually dropped. It's the only category that's dropped. Now, that doesn't mean there's fewer buyers in that segment. What it means is that those homes that used to cost $180,000, $190,000 have crept over the 200 mark. But there are still several locations, including some of ours, that you can buy a home for under $200,000, which is a typical price range for a first-time buyer, somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. And so you can go to HighlandHomes.com. You can also go to HorizonHomesDFW.com. Those are our two brands that first-time buyers would be interested in. We've got a couple of communities in Fort Worth for those folks on the west side of town. One is Parks at Willow Ridge. Another one is Liberty Crossing, a Highland and a Horizon community, where we have homes for under 200 and homes for over 200,000. We also have a community in Collin County for those kind of up north in Melissa, right off Highway 121, that starts from the low twos. And then we also have a community out in Forney, Travis Ranch, which I believe our home prices start about $150,000. So lots of great options, lots of great locations, great access to highways. So depending on what part of the Metroplex you want to live in, we should have something for you.
And we're going to talk a little bit more for people that aren't familiar with home buying and what it really costs you every month when you get your loan and you do your principal and interest, taxes, insurance, and mortgage insurance if you don't have 20% down. We're going to really dial into that later in the show. Old rule of thumb used to be if I'm buying a house and it's $100,000, take 1% of that, your payment's going to be $1,000. But with interest rates being so low today, it's just amazing to me that's really the payment on a 15-year note.
You know, that's the one prediction that we didn't get right in April. We all thought the interest rates would have gone up by now, and they have crept a little bit, but they're still at historic lows, and that purchasing power, Steve, is really amazing, really amazing.
Yeah, so even though the prices may be a little higher, trust me, your payment's not going to go up that much.
That's right.
Well, Aaron, I appreciate you coming on the show today, and we're going to go to a break. So I really appreciate coming in. Aaron Graham of Highland Homes and Horizon Homes, great builder. If you're out in the marketplace, you make sure you go to the website. What's the website again? HighlandHomes.com,
or for our Horizon brand, it's HorizonHomesDFW.com.
All right. Thanks for being on the show, Aaron. You're listening to Real Talk Texas on AM 570 KLIF News and Information.